Hey guys, this is Woodshop Junkies, and today I'm going to jump back into making the most of my small shop by adding a brand new and exciting multifunctional storage and organizer unit. So the idea is to take this small piece of unused wall in my workshop and cram it full of compact, organized and most importantly functional storage for tools and components. I designed the unit in three major segments with some cabinets at the top with some interesting additional features. In the center, a small part storage and organizer unit that can also double as a work surface, giving me easy access to the stored items and a place to use it. At the bottom, some multifunctional cabinets that can detach and be used in other places in the shop. Now before I jump into today's video, I do want to mention, though I'm building this unit for my workshop, the intention behind the design was to create an all-in-one compact crafting space that can be easily adapted for a range of arts, crafts and hobbies by giving a person a range of organized compact storage for small tools and components, and also being able to convert into a space to use it. Right, so to get started, I'm going to install a full-length backing to install all my components to. It's going to be a bit easier than drilling about 50 holes in the cement brick to fix everything to the wall. And besides being a base for my project to be built off of, it has no real cosmetic value. That's why I chose to go with OSB. And to secure it, I'm going to adapt a component I used with my height adjustable lumber rack and install them along the edges of the board to keep it in place. Right, so these are the two pieces that are going to be fixed on the edges of the backboard, and it's going to be the only pieces really fixed to the wall. That's why I doubled them up to give them a bit of additional strength and also to increase the surface area. Right, so these pieces are going to be fixed from the front like I did with my height adjustable lumber rack. But before I do, I'm going to install strips on the side of it like this to apply pressure to the backboard and keep it in place. This piece is a lot wider than it needs to be for this specific function, but it's also going to accommodate a rail system to add functionality to pieces that are going to be installed later on. Okay guys, so that's the sides pretty much finished and ready to be installed. As for the holes, I drilled about halfway with a large fastener bit to accommodate the head of the coach screw and also to accommodate a small socket to tighten it. The rest of the way I drilled with my hand drill because the stroke on my drill press was a little bit too short. Now I can drill the holes on the wall and fix them in place. Okay guys, so that's the backing installed and it's fairly solid. It gives me a decent foundation to build my project. The first addition I'm going to make is my parts storage and organizer unit that's going to go in the center and can double as a work surface. So the idea with the small parts storage and organizer unit is a shallow double door cabinet that houses a series of bins for parts and components. Maybe even have some tools up against the backboard. Opening the double doors as a cabinet works will give me access to what's inside. But I also want the front of the cabinet to slide down into a table configuration, giving me a place to work with the equipment stored inside. So to get started, I'm going to make the movable or slidable component of the unit. Alright guys, so this is pretty much going to be the side of my cabinet on the movable component, and it's pretty much going to sit like that. Now for my design or concept to work, I need this to be able to change from this position into a table position. And to do this I had a few options, with the most obvious and easiest way to do it being to add a hinge at the bottom and simply fold it down like that. Now besides the fact that the hinge option isn't really going to work for my design, I didn't like it to begin with. The reason being, I need to be able to support the table when it is in this position, and for that I pretty much have two options. Either a chain at the top to keep it in this position, but that would restrict the area I have available on the top, or for objects to hang over the edge. Secondly, I can add legs at the bottom which are also on hinges, and when the table folds out, they fold into a supporting position. But this will create a cluttered and messy look when the cabinet is in its stored position, or the table is in its cabinet position. Now I'm going for a cleaner look. When the unit is in the cabinet configuration, I don't want it to look like a fold down table. I also want the process of folding between the two configurations to be as simple and effortless as possible. To achieve this, I'm going for a sliding option over a folding option, and seeing as that the movable component sides is going to be responsible for this functionality, I'm going to finish prepping them first so I can demonstrate before assembling the unit. Right guys, so to achieve the sliding over the folding option, I added these bearings, and to add them I took a normal Allen cap bolt and cut the top off, leaving only a small flange to retain the bearing. The reason I cut the top off was to maximize the rolling surface inside the slide. Then I added my two bearings and a nut to keep them in place. And to add them to the folding or sliding component sides, I simply added this T-nut so I can bolt them in place. So the idea is to have a rail system on the outside that would allow me to, instead of folding the cabinet into a table, slide it into a working position like this. So next up I'm going to fix another piece of plywood on the outside here to cradle the bearing or to house the bearing, and then I can assemble the folding or sliding component of the unit. Okay guys, so this is pretty much the skeleton of the folding component. It will form the shell of the cabinet. It's going to have two doors on the front that gives me access to what's inside, and it will fold down into a table. So I doubled up on these pieces here by gluing two pieces of wood together to give me a bit more strength when it is folded down for stability, so hopefully it's enough. I also drilled these holes over here which are going to form pivot points, but I will explain more about that in a moment. Okay guys, so this is pretty much going to be the height of the cabinet, and thanks to the rollers I have the ability to change the height of it. Next I need the ability to change the angle to get it into a table position, and for that I'm going to use a component that I call a swing arm, which is pretty much a link with a pivot at each end. One pivot will attach to this unit while the other pivot will attach to the backboard, and as the height of this changes it will force the change in angle. So next up I'm going to make up these swing arms and then install the pivot. Right, so this is pretty much what the link or swing arm is going to look like, and it will obviously have a pivot at each end. Now, to make it a bit stronger, I layered 3 pieces or 3 layers of 1/2-inch plywood together, which also gives me the ability to splice in this piece like this. I'm doing this because I need to offset the top pivot. The reason for this will make more sense when I start with the assembly. I also cut up these pieces, which I'm going to glue in like that, but that's mostly cosmetic. So I'm going to glue this all together, drill the pivot holes, and I can start assembling the unit. So that's pretty much it for the links. Next I'm going to make the mountings for the pivots on the backboard. Right, so this is pretty much what the bottom pivot mounting is going to look like. It will be installed at the base of the swing arm and be fixed to the backboard. For the pivot axle, I cut a piece of aluminium pipe and installed it into the holes I drilled, and then also softened the edges with my router just to act as a lead-in when inserting the pipe to make it a bit easier. So I will assemble these at the base of the swing arms and fix them in place on the backboard. Okay, so this is pretty much the movement I'm going for. It is a little bit stiff, but a little bit of resistance might actually work in favor of the design. Now I space the swing arm and the bottom pivot mount using washers so that the wood doesn't grind up against each other and wear itself out. Now when everything's installed, I'll cap the ends here just to prevent the pipe from coming out. Okay, so I installed temporary stop blocks to keep the folding component in the rails at a certain height to allow me to install the upper pivots. When I have installed them, I'll take the stop blocks out again. Now in the past I used to use all kinds of tubing for my pivot points, and I used to keep them in place with a bolt through the center, like I did with my fold down roof shelf. But for this project I decided to go for a solid steel bar that I bought in a full length or a long length, and I cut to size to suit the application. Using the solid bar is more robust, and it also has another advantage that I'll get to in a moment. Before I get to the second advantage of using the solid bar or the solid pin, I'm going to add another layer of wood on the outside of the folding unit for two reasons. Firstly, to increase the surface area in contact with the pin so it doesn't wear out so quickly, and secondly, to close the seam between the folding unit and the rail. As you can see, I already installed this one because it's a bit tricky to get clamps and stuff in there when the unit is against the wall, so I did it before I put the unit in place. Right, so while the glue is curing, I just want to mention once again, between the wooden components I added some washers on the pivot so that it doesn't grind up against each other. And as for the second reason why I like using these steel pins, and I'll probably be using them more often in the future for pivots, is because I'm able to drill and tap them. So now to keep the entire assembly together or to keep the bar in place, I simply drilled a hole at each end, cut some thread, and now I can add a bolt with a washer, and that will keep the assembly together. Right, so now I've removed the temporary stop blocks and I've installed these pieces at the bottom over here. The purpose of them is to keep the unit or to support it when it is in a table position. And I made them height adjustable so I can fine tune the level of the table to get it perfectly flat. Right guys, so that's pretty much it for the swing component or the folding component. And now you should be able to see why I offset the pivots on the swing arm so that the swing arm can sit parallel to the backboard when the unit is in its stored position. Now earlier in the video I mentioned that I want unpacking and packing the unit to be as effortless as possible, as close as I can get to a one-hand operation, and that's why I want to emphasize this pivot. I could have moved it all the way to the front and probably made the entire assembly more stable, but the reason I put it back a little bit is so that when I want to unpack the unit I can simply apply a little bit of pressure at the top here. That would get me into a position where I can just push it forward to pack it back. For a table, this isn't exactly ideal because it's a little bit unstable. I'm bound to apply pressure at this point while I'm working and I don't want the unit doing that. So I'm going to have to work on a way to lock the back in place when I have the unit in a table configuration. Now the project is obviously far from finished. I still need to add doors to the cabinet and also the wall mounted component so that when it is closed it looks like a cabinet. I need to add some bins and other storage and organization components, and I also want to do a soft open, soft closed feature. Finally, I would like to add some locks to keep the unit in the either open or closed position. Alright guys, so that's pretty much it for this video. There's still a lot of work to do, but as I mentioned, I think this design can be adapted for a lot of applications, so I'm very excited about getting it finished. If you guys have anything you want to add or any opinions about the build, please drop it in the comments section down below. And if you want to see me finish my ultimate space saver for small workspaces, remember to subscribe. I will be back really soon with another edition on this build, but for now, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Till next time, cheers.